Every small ripple adds up. And before long, you're not just moving water, you're moving oceans. Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a third generation minister, international best-selling author of 39 books and counting. I've had the wonderful privilege of working with nearly 5,000 people to help them everywhere in the process, from writing to publishing to marketing their books to bestseller. But most importantly, to finding that powerful clarity that allows them to be who they are, to know the messaging, the words, and the things that they're meant to do in this world. And I want to help you do that. And that starts by you just making the tiniest of steps. The ripple effects that happen in life, they don't happen from great big giant things. Okay. Even if you drop a great big massive boulder in the middle of the water, okay, and the first ripple, okay, that is one type of ripple. But when you take and you just gently tap the side of the water, think about in your bathtub for a second, and you gently tap the side of the water. Okay, you see what I'm saying? And the wave goes across. And there's an echoing effect that happens in waves because, and I'm going to talk in this particular case of the sound wave, the wave of your voice. Okay, it hits a surface and it reflects back. It actually, in some ways, although it may be imperceptible to your own human ear, it actually magnifies from each of those reflexive bounces that it does. And that is a way for you to make a massively incredible impact on the world. And before you know it, you're not just making ripples, you're not just making little tiny splashes, you're actually creating tsunamis that are moving in the water, that are changing the very environment of the entire planet with the things that you say, the things that you do, and the you that is you, that the world so desperately needs it. And we want to dive a little deeper into that today because I really want you to be able to start seeing the power of your words and just how much, just how far and wide they can go. We've been talking this whole week. This is day 4 for those of you that, of this week. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, day 4. And I meant to, I should go back and relabel them. But anyway, I meant to be labeling these as, week 1, day, XYZ. My bad. But anyway, I really want you to take a look at this whole concept of ripple. Okay. It's that 1% shift. All right. I mean, giant, massive changes, they're cool. But revolutions have a tendency to end. Okay. The Revolutionary War. If you're from England, you may not necessarily have the same teaching or the same viewpoint of the Revolutionary War as we here in the United States see it. It would be seen more as a rebellion and as a group of, upstarts taking and ousting you out of your own country. And that's the problem with giant, massive revolutions versus a movement. Because a movement is inclusive. Not in that wacky DEI level where inclusiveness doesn't really mean inclusive, it really means exclusion. But in the real total sense of like a snowball. Have you ever made a snowman? I hope you've gotten a chance to do it, no matter where you live. Even if you live down south someplace where you never get snow, I hope you've gotten to go someplace where there is snow and gotten to make a snowman, and then go back to someplace warm and not have to live in the cold climates, all winter long, because it's really not that much fun. Trust me, I know. I'm dealing with this every winter when I go through it. But when you start out making a snowman, you take and you make a snowball. Like if you're going to have a snowball fight, basically. You just pack some snow together, okay? And then you just kind of waggle it around, kind of back and forth and around. And what happens is the snow that you're rolling it through attaches to it, and the ball gets a little bigger and a little bigger. And you got to be good about, kind of moving it in a circular pattern and not just roll it all one way, or else you'll make, essentially a wheel. You'll make something that's cylindrical. A cylinder would be a great word for it, versus a sphere. And you want it to be a sphere. You want it to be a round, a globe, right? And at first, when you're running that over there, you're just picking up a few little grains, if you will, of snow with each time. And then the more you move it, the deeper the imprint of it goes. It's really fun to do this after you've had a huge snow. I mean, like giant, huge snow, okay? We moved from Indiana, and in Indiana, there was a few times, I remember a couple of really bad blizzards we had where over the course of a 2, 3, 4 day storm, we got 20 or even more than 20 inches. We moved to South Dakota. That winter, I remember I was home for Christmas vacation, and I remember going to bed, there was no snow on the ground, and waking up the next morning to 27 inches of new snow on the ground. Yes, the wet, fluffy snow is the best versus the hard rock, ice, crystally snow. But there's something cool about, that really deep snow. I went back to school. I went to boarding school that year. And, the snow was so high at one point during the school year that though it wasn't as tall quite as much as our cars, it drifted. And so it drifted over all the cars that were, because we could drive there, but we weren't really allowed to drive off campus without permission. So the cars pretty well just basically sat there. So, and then, you bring the snow plow through to keep the driveway and the parking lot clear, and that blows it too. Plus, South Dakota has massive wind. If you've never experienced, the near tsunami version of wind, hurricane gale forces of wind that is, the Plain States wind. I mean, I know those of you that live like Patricia does down in Florida, you've definitely felt hurricane force winds. So I'm not dismissing that either. But it's it's a different kind of concept, and it just blows. And so you have great big drifts. And we actually, because it had drifted completely over our cars, we took and we on top of the cars chiseled out, like sports cars. We made them into like Ferraris and Porsches and stuff like that. Even though they were, Chevettes and little broke old pickup trucks and things like that. The thing you learn when you're dealing with snow in that deep of a level is that you start off, you're rolling the snow on the surface, and then it gets a little heavier, and it goes down a little deeper, and it gets a little heavier and a little heavier. Pretty soon, even when you've got 27 inches of new snow on the ground, even then, pretty soon the ball is big enough and it weighs enough that with each time you push it, it's going through. It's literally making a complete, if you will, channel through the snow. And and it may start off that the ball isn't, well, in fact, it definitely starts off that the ball, when it's small, isn't 27 inches. And it may be that it starts attaching all of the snow in the particular next roll that you do before it gets to that full 27 inch. It's a really different thing when you're creating snowmen in that giant of a structure. Okay, I can also tell you that you get the balls of the snowman very, very quickly when you're adding 20 or 27 inches of snow every time you turn it over. And there's a whole lot of elements to the technology end of making it stay round and blah blah blah. Sorry, went off on a tangent there. And The reason why I bring that up is because that's more what a movement is. A movement is something that starts off really small. It starts off with that one drop of snow that falls. You know what it's like? I mean, think about it. If you've ever watched it snow, or even if you've ever been out in the snow, typically speaking, the ground isn't as quite as cold as the snow. Now, that's not always the case, and sometimes the ground's much colder, but just generally speaking, that first drop, if it doesn't melt away, you don't really see it. It doesn't just sit there and you're not like, oh, look, there's one snowflake. It falls and then it, for lack of a better phrase, disappears. So, really, when we start speaking, I want you to really see this. I'm going slow with it on purpose. Okay? That first snowflake falls. And yeah, you're right. Trees catch it. The wind blows it around. It doesn't land. The little snowflake had a plan. It was zeroed in on this perfect spot in the grass that it was going to land. Nice, soft place to fall. And instead, the wind caught it and it blew it through the branches and blah, blah, blah. And that one little poor, lonely snowflake all by itself, it often melts, or for whatever other word you want to call it, it just becomes unseen on the ground that it landed on. And then a few more snowflakes fall, and a few more. And then you have kind of a, if you will, dusting of snow. That's usually when you can look out and you can see, kind of a light dusting of snow on your car. But the grass around it, still in many cases, you can't really see the snow. You can tell that it snowed, and if it stopped there, there's nothing to shovel. There's no snowmen that you can make, none of that kind of stuff. All you got to do is just scrape off your windows and go to work. But then a few more snowflakes join. And then it starts, it breaks that barrier where it falls and then kind of dissipates to the point where it starts to accumulate. We know what that's like when we're kids. Any of you that have ever lived in an area where, there was the potential for a snow day, we know what that's like. You sometimes are even just sitting in the window watching it, or you keep running back to the window to see what's built up. And you're all disappointed because, the first 200 times you run to the window, there's really no evidence, even though you can see the snow falling. And it may be coming down really hard, and it still doesn't really feel like it's accumulating. But it is. And sometimes when you go to bed at night, you're like, didn't get enough snow, gonna have to go to school. And then you wake up in the morning and you run to the window because you're still so hopeful, right? And you look out and you think, yes, this is it. Snow day. Because, the whole entire world is blanketed underneath of all of that snow. That's the way a momentum, that's the way this ripple effect that I'm talking about works. Because if you were just to take, this bottle of water, and I got to drink out of it in order for this example to work, which is fine because I need a drink of water. Okay, got to make sure the lid's on tight in order for this example to work. Okay, you see how the water just kind of rotates back and forth? I don't know if you can see that or yeah, it looks like it's showing up. Okay. Do you see how, and I want to do that again. Do you see how it bounces back and forth a couple of times? And even now, and some of that's because of my hands, but even now, do you see how there's still a little bit of waviness on it? And if you just kept the momentum up, there would always be a wave. And if the momentum gets a little stronger, okay, until you have, see how the bubbles now are forming below the water? I hope you can see that. I can see it from my side. I don't know how well that showed up on the video. See, that's momentum. We start off with the little tiny movements, and the water's just moving. And then we pick up the pace. We pick up the momentum. And then it starts bouncing back. You see how it hits one side and then bounces back to the other? And it can do that. And then we pick up the pace more. Then it starts making bubbles that's cresting, and it's doing all kinds of things. The same's true with the momentum. That's where consistency comes in. You see, your clarity is the water, your message. The consistency allows that to not just be one little ripple, but the multiple ripples. You're sending out a wave and then another wave, okay? And what happens is, and I don't have the ability to be able to do that, to really exemplify. I can't believe I just used the word exemplify to exemplify that for you. But you can kind of see it. You know, you go this way and you start doing it, and it gets to the place where they're slamming into each other. They meet in the middle and they go, you know, and then bubbles go down, and okay. And that's the same with the ripples that you're creating with your message. You send one out, okay? And it's not just going this way, it's also echoing back. And then you send out another wave and they crash into each other, and that makes an impact. And the waves go out and more and more and more and more, and it builds. And before you know it, this ripple, this movement that you started and you felt like it was going nowhere, that movement, that consistency of putting the wave after wave after wave, it starts magnifying. It starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you get others on board with you. And in this particular case, it could be people whose lives you affect. We talked about a couple of days ago about you writing the book and feeling like it went to nowhere and it only was your mom that bought it. But then we talked about how that book travels around the world, and even more so the words that come out of that, and how generation after generation are impacted by the things that you took the time to write down and put in that book. That's why books are so massively important in what you're doing. Especially the phrase bestseller. That's a whole marketing thing, the bestseller thing. But your words are important and they need to be captured. Yes, they need to be captured on video, but they need to be captured in writing too. The momentum begins to create a movement because, and let me paraphrase, let me fix that just a little bit. When we add consistency to it, see, your willingness, your want, your desire to connect, that's great, and I applaud you for it. But it's the consistency that comes with the connection that begins to make the momentum, that turns that motion into a movement. Connection, you can bring your heart in, and you can want and need and know that you need to reach people. And that's really what you need in connection. Consistency is a scheduling situation. It's about putting into your calendar and showing up. Now, does that mean that you got to be a militant jerk about it? And if it's 12:05 and you committed that you're going to do it at 12, you need to be hard on yourself? No, in fact, just the opposite. Commit to showing up every day. And if you show up at 8 a.m. sometimes and you show up at 8 p.m. some other times, show up. We've been doing the mirror work now this week. And you've seen me every single morning. It's been at different times. A, because I take my walk at different times. B, because I'm doing it, the last 3 days I've done it in windows in the building that I'm still claiming and leaving room for God to bring in whatever he wants. But I'd love for that property to be something. There's some really amazing things that I believe that you and I together. Yes, I'm talking to you, Patricia, as well as all the other people that are going to listen now live and on the replay. There's some really cool, incredible things that we're going to do in this world, and I believe that that can be the headquarters for it. But I'm also willing to let God be in control of that, and that's a really cool space. But in the meantime, I'm doing my mirror work, but I'm doing it in the reflection in the glass so that you can both see the vision and so that I can see the possibility, see the promise. I'm not just saying all that's been promised is happening right now, but rather I'm actually seeing what is promised. How tall is it? You'll have to give me more than that, I guess. Yeah, I like that thing that you're saying. Even just bubbles, just blowing little bubbles that start out as bubbles below the surface, and then they break the surface and they create a ripple. Oh, so the high school is a 2-story building. The big, what I'm calling the tech building, is it's either 2 or 3 stories. And then the elementary school is a 1-story building. And then the gym is technically the height of a 2-story building, and it may have a balcony in it. I haven't gotten a chance to get into it, so it may have a second level on it, or it may be more like risers that go up, and so it's kind of a second level, but it's really all 1 story with a tall ceiling. But yeah, it's a 2-story height building, and all of them were brick buildings. Really, really cool stuff. I could just hijack the whole rest of this live and just talk about the property because I'm so jazzed about it. If you want, Patricia, I'll send you. In fact, I will. I'll send you some pictures, some videos actually, via Facebook. And if anybody else wants to be part of the vision, I'll send you the videos too. We would love to have you be part of it. There's some incredibly cool things that we can do in the world. And I think together we can bring together a thing and really do some amazing things in this world. And it all starts from that first snowflake. That first, and I like that word. Thanks, Patricia. I appreciate that. That first bubble. And then goes from there for more bubbles and more bubbles and more ripples until you're creating giant tsunami-sized waves. You're impacting the entirety of the world. The first person you're impacting is you. You say it, you do it, you believe it enough that you actually believe it. That you don't just say it, you're not just trying to convince yourself, but you're actually living in the space of it being a reality for you. Not because I was reading a verse, and it is actually a Bible verse, but I was reading a verse that, was talking about hope isn't something that is based on the things that you can see. That's not hope. If you see it, you're not hoping for it. That's, that's legit. That's substantive. But like, for example, with the buildings, seeing the people walking the campus, seeing the different, possibilities, like going down to the one big building that is the band building. I thought it was a garage. I thought it was, like a bus barn. Ends up that it's this beautiful, brilliantly wonderful, great big band room. And seeing that, then hope comes in, because it's empty. There's one little keyboard in there, but other than that, it's empty. The hope comes in because the thing you can't see in the physical in there is all of the studio equipment in there, and the ability for, like, even a full live band, or even a full orchestra, to come in, and the potential of even recording that. And that all starts, it all literally started from the one little teeny tiny ripple. I was out literally walking down the street like I do every day, because it's around the corner from my house. I've got one of the videos where literally I'm showing the building, and then I show the two vacant houses that are across the street from it, and I walk past them, and I'm like, and then here down this road, there's my house. Okay. I mean, so the school buildings are something that literally I walk by every day, a couple times a day. Right now, I'm doing multiple walks a day. I like that. What you see is already your responsibility. And I was walking around, talk about the tiniest little bubble that turns into a ripple. I was walking around the street, and I turned right at the corner where I used to always turn. My walks actually changed since this, but turned to the corner there, and and I saw a sign that said "for sale," and the nature of how big that property is. I actually walk by the gym building, and the high school is actually just a little bit to the left of where I turn, back when I was doing the walk that way. I was like, oh, that's interesting. The gym's for sale. And then I forget if it was that walk or the next time I went. I think it was the next time I went around. Or it might even been when I was out driving that I was like, oh, wow, look, the whole school's for sale. No, in fact, I remember exactly how I found out that the whole school was for sale. I went out on Zillow, and I looked up, because I was like, that's kind of cool. Because my mom always tells stories about back when she was a freshman in high school playing basketball in that same gym. I was like, that's cool. I mean, I wonder if we could at least get together with a realtor and let my mom go inside and see the gym that she played high school in. And that's why I was originally looking up on Zillow. And then I saw that building, the whole high school, the elementary school. And I missed it that first time that I read it, but I was reading through it through some more detailed information, because I was like, you see that big building back there behind there? I wish we could get that too. I hope we can figure out a way to do that. And I discovered that actually you can get that as part of this whole deal, and you can also get the vacant lot that's across the street from that building. Just so many possibilities. But it all started from that one little bubble of the ripple of turning that corner. And first, like I said, I was just like, it'd be cool to let my mom see it. And then the next day, or a couple of days after, I turned to the corner, and I was like, I'm going to buy that building. I'm going to buy all of these buildings. I believe we can put the Zaraz International headquarters right here on that spot. And visions have continued, envisioning, not like some kind of deeply spiritual where God's actually physically manifesting things, but just the envisioning of the life that could be brought back to this whole entire community, and all of the amazingly cool things that can happen. See, that's me. That's the way that the ripple then turns into bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's to be determined still. I'm claiming it in my mind. I believe very strongly that it's a done deal. But I'm also willing to be able to let the momentum carry in the way that the momentum is supposed to. And that's, I think, where we run into problems. Just like that little snowflake that had zeroed out that really comfortable patch of grass that it was going to land on. And instead it crashed through a bunch of trees and got blown away around by the wind. And then it landed on a sidewalk instead. And then because the sidewalk was warmer than what it was, it melted. The water from the little snowflake is actually still there. Can't fight tsunamis, that's right. Just like you can't fight blizzards. That one little snowflake all by himself, he's just going to melt away and be nothing. But when we keep putting out the snowflakes, your words are the snowflakes. If you just say it once and you're just like, okay, I said it, there we go, boom, done. And after all, I put it on YouTube, so now it needs to go viral and I need to have 3,500 million people look at it. Instead of just have the words you say today be the one little snowflake, and assail them with 1,000 million billion more little snowflakes. The one little bubble of your word that breaks the surface and creates a ripple. Be like something that creates lots of bubbles. All bubbly, like a volcano under the water that erupts and sends up all kinds of bubbles. Be like that. Because that volcano under the water, when it erupts initially, now there's all kinds of scientists that are studying that kind of stuff and whatever. But if you're just sitting on the beach and there's a volcano out however far away that erupts, you didn't actually see it. And then comes to the surface, and then the waves start coming in. And then the waves start recessing out because a tsunami's coming. And people who don't understand the concept of a tsunami, they're like, oh, look, that's so interesting. And they go out to see parts of the under the water ocean that they never get to see. And then that tsunami comes rushing back in. I will not get you started on the different kinds of lava. Motion creates momentum. Momentum creates movements. Movements change the world. And that's what you're here to do, is to create the little tiny bubble that creates the little tiny ripple, that creates the little bit of movement that turns into motion, that becomes the true movement that turns into the tsunami that changes the world. Every ripple adds up. Every single word that you say out into the world, it adds up. That's why I'm always saying to you, the biggest piece of consistency is you consistently saying the same thing. Not be on your live and talking about all these wonderful, great, amazing things that you're going to do in the world, and then the rest of the time grousing about how horrible your life is. We've all lived that way, okay? So I'm not judging you for it. But I'm saying we need to get to the place where we're saying the things consistently that are shaping us. Because every ripple adds up. And before you know it, your voice becomes a wave that is the motion, that becomes the momentum and turns into the movement that changes the world. And I know you're going to do it. And I believe in you. And I see you. And I'm so excited for all that you're going to do. And I'm excited for you to join with us. And yes, I didn't give you any call to actions until right now, but I do really want you to come join us. Visibilityamplifier.com. Be part of our movement. We would love to have you be one of the members of Zaraz International. And I'm going to, after we get through this month we're going to launch Willie's song and make it #1. And we've got some cool giveaways. Go see my Facebook page or Willie's Instagram if you want to see some of the cool giveaways that are already starting to happen this month. but we're also behind the scenes building everything that is the movement that is Zaraz International in your voice, your words, your light, drawing all the kings of the world to you and making the difference in this world that only you can make. And that can start right here, right now, today by coming and joining us. Visibilityamplifier.com. Come join us. I hope you will. I'm so grateful for the time we get together. I appreciate you hanging on to all of the words and stuff that I put out there. And I hope this really made sense and that you will begin to start creating the ripples every single day, not based on what effect you see the one ripple makes, but by beginning to see what all of the ripples together begin to make. Tomorrow we're going to get together and we're going to talk about how your voice carries even when you're quiet. That'll be fun to get into, won't it? And until we're together again next time, tomorrow, I hope that you're happy, safe, warm, and loved, and that you have a great week.